his best form. Yeah, it's high expectations, right?
No kidding.
Okay. I'd like you to be in your worst form, by the way. It's more interesting. So let's admit some more people and then we'll start. And I'd like to start. Oh. Okay, so let's do a deal, Doug. While I'm talking, you will admit people. While you're talking, I'll admit people. And if we're both talking, they'll wait.
That works.
Hello, Will. Okay, so d- welcome to I don't know what. Uh, my intention in this thing, and by the way, I would like to record this for the sake of people who wanted to join yesterday, and because I'm really a messy guy, they couldn't. Um, at some point, I thought that I know a lot of people who I find fascinating, and a lot of them don't know each other. So for me, it's a chance to just have a virtual coffee break, an intimate discussion about nothing with someone, and let you join in, like you're sitting in the table near us, and like you're barging in or on a conversation. And it will include awkward pauses, and we may go to the bathroom if we need to. It's just like just like real life. That was basically the intention. Doug called me a few days ago and he said, "Would you like to prepare anything?" And I said, "Let's not prepare anything. I have no clue what I'm going to ask you or what you're going to ask me or what's going to happen. Let's just have the awkwardest moment possible of not knowing what to do." Okay, so that's basically the intention. If it will take a structured form, it's an illusion. Okay, so that's the intention on my part. What's the intention on your part?
So for me, the um, though putting the stake in the ground to have these conversations um, was an opportunity for me to spend 90 minutes with him. And he's one of my most favorite people because um, we're sort of brothers from different mothers in our commitment to living emergently and being in the present. And I find that a rare thing in the world. Um, and so I treasure and value the opportunity to interact on that basis. Um, and when I asked him whether he'd like to prepare, and he said no, and I said, "Oh, okay." And realistically, that only puts all of you at risk. And I had no idea how many people might actually take him up on his offer. Um, so um, I would just like to thank everybody for being here. I really appreciate your finding my name enough pull to spend your time here instead of watching the U.S. Congress embarrass themselves.
In fact, I have an idea. I'm opening a breakout room, and it's a breakout room that anyone can join. So whenever you feel bored in this room, just go to the other one. Okay, so like this way, it's really like a coffee. So you can either join the conversation or be alone there, or if a lot of people are joined, find someone you want to talk to, or just in the chat, invite them to talk offline. Just it, the the magic of virtual creation of spaces is amazing. Like this is for me one of the biggest gifts that 2020 gave us is opening the possibilities to to construct things out of nothing. Like years ago, if you wanted to have a building where you meet, you would have to construct a building that you meet where you meet. And if you would like to add another floor, you would have to have permissions, and It's a big mess. Currently, we can add as many rooms and tools as we want with zero cost. It's magic, no?
So I spend, as actually a bunch of you know, I spend a significant amount of time in spaces just like this. Um, and I experience them as co-creations. And I will also usually carry a hidden agenda, which is in that co-creativity, how can we do us better? And it seems like how we talk to each other might be a really good starting place. And I want to share a little anecdote about something recent that happened. I'm in a partnership, and um, and we had a partner leave, and it had been brewing for a whole bunch of time. And in the wake of their departure, there was a realization for several of us that the qualified energy that person brought had literally projected a huge amount of force and effect on how everybody felt in the living and the contributing to the collective. It was just a hugely powerful effect. And it's still living with me, which is why I'm raising it. That you know, I have this belief, and I forgive some of my partners are actually here and have heard this in the relatively recent time frame, so it's redundant for them, but it's not for most of you. I sort of believe that each one of us is the God of our own existence. But I recently did an addendum to that statement, which is each one of us is also a God. Like, I have unlimited generative potential to create whatever I want to create and bring it into the world. And and so do all of you, and so does everybody else. And it's sort of like we were endowed with this as a species, but not exactly given an instruction manual. And biologically, maybe not quite leveled up yet in terms of what sits atop our shoulders to use and wield that power particularly intelligently. And but once I started recognizing that intrinsically in everybody around me, the sort of chaos and incontinence of how people wield that power, and just in basic speech and how we communicate with each other, um, is really overwhelming and challenging to do better.
So when you say we're all gods of our own universe or the whole universe, we have to discuss what are the limits of a god. What does God mean?
Well, I guess in my frame, it's all about creativity. that we're the one species of all the species on the planet that has this just massively powerful, diverse array of ways of creating things, creating new things. So really, for me, it's pretty monodirectional, monothematic. It revolves around that we're creative beings, and we like doing that. We like doing that even better with other people. We're social in our creativity, and so um, that's really sort of the essential for me. Um, and there's somebody who's not here, but who provided great fodder for me. That the the expression in Judaism for the name of God Yahweh is actually not a name; it's actually an abbreviation for all that was, all that is, and all that will be, which sort of is the idea of what's been created, what's being created right now with all of us, and what's going to be created in the next minute.
Yeah, so
So,
for me, um, when we say we are gods, well, I'm a god, the main power of a god is the power of perception, not of creation. Perhaps they're connected. The power to um, have a vision that takes a chaotic cloud of signals and makes some sense out of it. And the power to take control over this sense to put different patterns. It's like, you know, the drawings of the that you can see in several ways, like the old woman, young woman, or stuff like this. Um, it's your mind who decides. Like when you say, I want to see the face, you see the face. When you say, I want to see the vase, I want to see the vase. And if you train yourself enough, or if you're intentional enough, you start to see both. You start to see um, a whole picture, and when you see the whole picture, you can start manipulating it as you like, and that's where the godliness, as you call, comes. And I'll add one more thing, even though I'm trying to to introduce you. Um, No, I forgot what I want to say. So I thought, in fact, before I tossed the ball right back at you, I think we started in the middle. Let's start. Let's continue with the beginning. What's your story? I talk to you a lot, and I know nothing. Like I know stuff that has to do with the music industry and with practicing law, and I know a bit more about creating communities and coaching. I don't know even if to call it coaching, or just like we talked before about, you know, emergence, godism, if you want. I'd like to know more.
okay, I'll see if I can give you the Reader's Digest version. So I was born and raised in New York City, so I'm a city kid, and and I am an attorney, still licensed in the state of New York, but I've been practicing as an unattorney for over 30 years. Um, and what I mean by that is I'm a lover, not a fighter. So I've never done litigation. I don't do anything, never been in a courtroom. I've only done transactional contract building things work, people that want to create things. Um, and uh, and for the most part, for the longest time, last decade and a half, um, I have been um, at the center of helping groups of people sort and sift what they want to do together and help them figure out what their agreements are between each other, and then codified that as part of the generative creative process, and then sent them to their attorneys in their corners for reference and checking and making sure that there isn't something that a particular person needed that wasn't taken care of or covered. And, but also sort of positioning everybody so they remember that the agreement constructed is between themselves and that they're the clients. And so if any lawyers got frisky a bit under the name of zealous representation of client, that's a buzz phrase in legal ethics, that their client would stop them from destroying or taking whatever the agreements were out of balance. So so I was the neutralizing effect for all the lawyers behind all of the people involved. And technically, under the Code of Ethics, you can't do that. You're supposed to represent one person. You can't represent multiple parties to a deal. But I've always tended to draw outside the lines. I got out of law school and I formed a production company. I loved entertainment and hung out a shingle as an entertainment lawyer and started working with some bands. And I ended up having some success in the music business. At its apex was a production company and a couple of recording studios and offices in certain cities across the United States and a lot of people. And I didn't know how to run a business. I wasn't bad at developing an artist. I had an artist that I took from her mother, pursued me at age 12. I put her through a post-feminist singer, songwriter, producer training program from 12 to 16. And I had said to them that we wouldn't look for her to do anything professionally until after she graduated high school. And she started approaching that and said, "So where's my record deal?" And so I got her placed. And long story short, the debut album, we had 4 top 5 hits. The last went #1 pop in the US. Generated 25 or $30 million in sales. And Columbia TriStar Film deal and a whole bunch of other things. At which point mom thought it was time for her to take over. And we parted ways, and he coasted about 2.5 years on the goodwill that had been generated, but ultimately the last records I executive produced for her were the last hits she had on the first 2 on the second album that they came out with. And I experienced what thou shalt not do in business. So I rode the company up. I wasn't a profligate liver, but I put a huge amount of resource back in and really didn't know what I was doing. But I learned what thou shalt not do. And I came out the back end of that working with and consulting to startups, early stage venture entrepreneurs. And so that evolved into a consulting practice doing that in parallel to law. And what I discovered was that one of my superpowers, I take no credit for knowing how I'm able to do it, but I'm able to sit down with somebody and they can give me a bare sketch of an idea or vision or something that they want to create. And I can extrapolate that out with relatively little information, 3 to 5 years, and give them greatest, grandest vision, business plan, operational implementation plan, down to the toilet paper and the paper clips.
Toilet paper is an important thing this year.
Very important thing, very important thing. And I can sort of see that, you know, like a little kid in the movie who said, "I see dead people." I see that. But what I found was that I would do that for people and they would see what their creation manifested to and shit their pants. It would scare the hell out of them. And so after doing that a couple of times, I was like, this isn't work, like there's opportunity value. It takes a lot of time to do that. So if I can't also work with the person to get them ready to actually receive the fruits of their own creative entrepreneurial vision, all was for naught. And that led into personal growth development traverse that continues to this day, started in 1998 and took me into coaching and working with people and doing shadow work and doing all sorts of support and development stuff, individual growth and personal development stuff. Fast forward, I crossed paths. Fabian is here, and he and I became partners.
Say hello, Fabian.
Yeah, he and I became partners. What?
Hello.
Long
5 years
time ago.
ago.
5 years ago.
Yeah.
And he and I met within somebody else's venture that we had both been drawn to, but we sort of recognized Lantzman and started down a path to sort of get down to the core of what is this thing about human creativity, human generativity. Like what's the essence of that? What's square one? What's the first piece, the first step? If people want to come together, collaborate, and create together. And we spent 18 months wrestling with language, jettisoning language that was so contaminated with the prevailing paradigm that we couldn't use it, and coming up with new languaging for the reality we were trying to get to as a new frame and paradigm. And we ended up with what we called the Values Manifesto. And we created something called the Values Foundation. And relatively early on, we had, I had expressed a desire to, whatever we came up with, that it target the largest multinational corporations in the world as a transformational offering. Because my belief was that with the world going to hell in a handbasket and us headed toward an extinction, the biggest scale, fastest way to affect a course correction and change would be affecting a transformational change in one of those large multinational corporations.
Belief was or belief still is?
Still is. So if we could transform one, the others would follow because there is a herd dimension to the business world. And if we could crack the nut on the belief that these large multinational corporations are too big to transform and prove that different, then we would sort of make a material difference in the world.
So I'd like to challenge you on this. May I?
Absolutely.
So I didn't speak about me, but never mind everything else for this question. I come from the best definition of me in a professional context is an agile coach. And as another agile coach, I always believed that since agility, business agility, whatever agility, is the best way for a business to survive and thrive and be alive. The rhymes, I didn't plan that. Um, there will be some evolutionary process. You know, like the companies who don't survive die, and the new ones that are born agile, and everything is fine. Doesn't work that way. The biggest monsters are still um, um, very present, and not necessarily in an agile way, good or bad. I'm not there to judge. Another example is when the internet it was born. I had a strong belief that this will be the end of conflict. No, everyone like suddenly everyone is exposed to everything, and there will be a big equalizer. There will be no more misunderstandings. I don't know how to measure it, but I have a gut feeling that the opposite has happened. Like that it gave way to um, how do you, to polarity, to groups, to find enough force to exist with ideas and intentions that conflict each other. It's like, instead of a lot of small countries that have small wars between them, now there's huge masses who have a huge conflict between them. So I'm not sure I share your optimism that if you convert, let's say, one whatever you call it, the enterprise or whatever, into the light side, into the good side, the rest will follow. What I do think is that one is enough. So that's the interruption that I and that I wanted to make. But also I wanted to add two anecdotes of to what you said, like just side notes. When you said that you created that you had to invent a new language, it reminded me of a book that I liked a lot, which is called The Meaning of Life. You know the book called The Meaning of Life? So
I have seen it, yeah.
yeah. So and the idea is Douglas Adams with someone else, I don't remember who, he created words for things that have no word. So Leaf, for example, is a book whose whole content is written on the backside of the book, just like the book The Meaning of Life. And the other thing is something fascinating about the music business that I saw today is that I saw a sequence of 20 minutes of Beatles music that was generated by AI. I don't know if you saw something like that or not. And I think we're in the brink of something huge in the sense of like part of what we think that will happen in the future is that all blue collar professions will somehow dissolve, and only the thinking part, if you're a thinker, you have a contribution to make. And I think AI is exactly the opposite. Like AI starts to be a very deep thinker. And like I listened to the Beatles, 20-minute recording. There was no big catchy hit, but it sounded really, really like them. And I see art that's done by computer, by AI, that is Van Gogh style and Cézanne style and Monet style, and it's amazing. And it's not any imitation. It's just learning learning from the product how someone thinks and letting it run. So these are, I don't know, there's no question there. I can ask you, what do you think about that if you want, but just wanted to share these with you. So what do you think about that or not?
Well, the we didn't actually, on the language front, we didn't actually invent new language. I actually have a significant refractory reaction to secret handshakes and special language. I also relate the same way to things that are color coded and or letter codes for things. It took us 18 months to come up with regular language that was clear, concise, compelling, and appropriate for what we were attempting to talk about. So it was sort of the opposite. On the AI front, it's actually the line between three-dimensional and virtual reality and hybridizations combining both is just getting really blurry. And we haven't evolved any signaling, labeling to distinguish between the two. So the phenomenon in the US right now with our soon-to-be former president and his followers, there was a fascinating article that I hate it that I can't provide attribution, but someone who really did a brilliant analysis of the Trump movement as really an alternative reality game that was born out of actually gaming culture. It was born out of online communities that are, fundamentally anarchic as play, not as, intentional ill motive, but just literally anarchic backboards and gaming communities and whatever. And that it broke out of those communities into QAnon, and then broke out of QAnon into mass media. It's sort of like an alternative reality game construct with all these conspiracy theories and all these unbelievably fantastical concoctions escaped their online containers, made it into the public square, and almost 50% of the population believed it. Like, became addicted, became players in the game. They weren't
you
told.
can even say that
They weren't told it was a game.
I think
they
that
were.
you can even say that almost 90% of the population were manipulated by it.
Oh, absolutely. Whether they became players in it or adverse to it, it affected the whole population. And to a certain extent, that's not just confined to that example. I mean, our social media, the Googles, the Amazons, programming people to buy, programming people to follow, programming people to devote time and attention to their platforms. All of it is very intentional, deliberate, and powerful influencing programming of people. And, we're not that long out of the cave. So, how many people are actually prepared to recognize those things affecting their whole belief system and construct and perception of their reality? And that's a thing to be looked at, tackled, and addressed, I think. And that conversation hasn't even begun. Like, hasn't even started anywhere.
So you said two things that triggered me. One is it affected, people don't recognize that it affects them, and two, that conversation hasn't started, and it hit my old nemesis, which is binary thinking. Because for me, people recognize everyone recognizes the impact of how things work now, social media, whatever, to an extent. I guess we consider ourselves that we recognize it. We don't 100% recognize it. The conversation hasn't started. It started long ago. Like it started, with Asimov and way before that, with Lao Tzu, if you want, like it's the book of Tao. Like it started. It's a matter of volume. It's a matter of how visible it is. But a lot of times, the invisible is stronger than the visible. So, like you speak. First of all, I don't know where you get the information that it didn't start. But two, even if we can agree that it's not visible, it doesn't mean that it didn't start at all. So, like these were my triggers.
Yeah, I think and maybe I should reframe. It's not that the conversation or the awarenesses aren't present and haven't been been projected and predicted from a ways back. It's that there hasn't been a collective emergent response to it. It's sort of been running wild. There's been no constraint, restraint, regulation, or even attempt to approach that in relation to the Facebooks and the Googles and the Amazons.
I
There's
think it's
a
forming.
there's
I
a
think that the societies that block Google or Facebook altogether, right? Again, for good or bad, it's another discussion, but it has started. It didn't start in the circle that's visible to you or that's meaningful to you.
well, the states that have been able to do blocking on that level are generally doing worse by their own hand. So when I say there hasn't been a concerted effort on behalf of the masses, on behalf of individuals, I really think that's sort of missing. But the piece that sort of occurred to me is that maybe there's an addition to the Bill of Rights, there's an addition to the concept of fundamental rights that's required that says a person is entitled to be told whether what they're being presented is rooted in three-dimensional reality or whether it's affected, distorted, or synthetically created or not. Like,
So,
is the music you're listening to actually from a band named X, or was it created by a computer emulating the Beatles?
and does
And
it
and
matter?
and should you know that? Well, whether it the concept of notice, signaling and notice, does that matter? It matters to people that have it register and reflect in them stopping smoking because the package says this is going to kill you. But discretionarily, it's up to the agency, the individual, what they, continue to consume and accept and subject themselves to or not.
And Fabian just put a comment that I have to read. It said that he heard of a service recently called Truth as a Service. Which is nice.
Yeah,
And by the way,
I like that.
I think a lot of companies go there because they say, I'll let them in, because they say, eh, pay us to, and you won't get any publicity. By paying us, and it joins another conversation that we had offline a few weeks back. By paying us, you allow us to provide you a clean service and not a service that's tainted by our hidden desire to live and survive and thrive anyway. Like we provide you something for free, but we have to survive. We have Facebook provides you a service for free, and because they have to survive. I'll be naive for a second. They push commercials your way, and they push media that will incite you to incite others, so more users will use the system because that's the way to make money. And if you put this part of letting people earn, people, organizations, whatever, same thing, earn a decent wage, and in return, as an explicit service to say, in return to let's say you have Facebook and you can pay Facebook not to use these algorithms against you or for you, or not to include you in the machine that makes money through you. Okay? You might have a very pleasant service provided to you that might be worth the money that you pay, right? So this is one. And two, going back to what you just said, I think that besides legislation, there's a lot of processes going on. So even, Facebook and Twitter and the likes changed a lot during these 4 years. They put more constraints on them. They have a public opinion that pulls them into a place. And this public opinion is the public opinion of the good guys from our perspective, right? So they put more constraints and they allow you to complain and they allow you to say this post is not true. And the processes that are happening without the legislation. So I'm not sure that legislation is the thing that will turn things around. Things are always, again, I go back to Lao Tzu, things are always turning around. And I go back to what we said way before in the beginning of this conversation. It's a matter of perception. If you choose to see the world through the legislation, then you will see the changes through the legislation that's happening. And if you choose to see it through another perspective, then you will see it in another perspective. So like truisms, like statements like this doesn't happen or this happens are too strong for this guy. For Lao Tzu, he would kick you, in the ass, I guess. No?
Yeah, I don't I don't see it through a binary lens. I don't see anything through a binary lens.
Yeah, I'm just trying
my
to bug you.
yeah yeah no my sort of center reference is really the individual. And
I don't understand.
My experience, my sense making, my felt sense of present moment. One dimension of that is how am I receiving what I'm experiencing? What channel of sense or perception? My relation to it, its relationship to me in terms of underlying values, my being aware and awake and conscious of my own agency, authority, voice. All of those dimensions in the current paradigm and cultural frame we live in have been completely confused, mixed up, and distorted. And I don't say that setting up or suggesting a boogeyman, a deep state or an antagonist, responsible for that. It's a de facto consequence of the cultural frame that our species has created for itself.
And you say it as if it's a bad thing.
I do. No, it's not that it's a bad thing. I think it's not as it could bear improving. That we as a species, as a generative creative species, comprised of generative creative gods all, can do better.
When you talk about this, I think about the Greek gods. They were amazing and they fought all the time and they
All the
created
time.
catastrophes. So the fact that we're all gods doesn't make it any better.
Well, it's the allusion to godhood is not that the fact of that makes it better. It's that the fact of that means intrinsically we can do better. Right now, we're heading ourselves toward a global extinction. Can we avert that? Can we do better in that regard? Yeah.
So just so to put I want to frame this session, okay? So my intention was to have 1.5 to 2 hours, and I see a lot of things in the comments that I'm ignoring, and I think we'll open the mic to anyone who says, ask him about this or tell him that, whatever, in about 13 minutes. Okay, so you can put it in the chat. Why not? But I'm choosing to ignore it. And okay, all right. So where were we?
So the question is not sort of in opposition to anything that exists, but in service to figuring out how can we do us better? How can we improve the reality that we're responsible for creating through a consequential lens, negative consequential lens? How can we do us better?
And
And
I have I have a hard time with the word better.
tell me
I
more.
remember that there was the album of Paul Simon, and he had a song called "One Man's Ceiling is Another Man's Floor." And I always imagined it a hierarchical one, but on the album, he had like a box and he had one chair here and one chair here. Okay, so I don't know, better for whom?
From a life sustainability, coexistence, and regenerative place, better for all, better for the whole biome, better for the planet, and better for our species. And because right now the course we're on, we don't survive, we don't make it.
So
So
I have to tell you the way I feel about this is so what? I mean,
that
for sure, as we have as human beings, we have the strong inherent motive to survive. For sure, if we don't survive, it goes against our instincts, right? The same instincts, by the way, that tell us to do a lot of other things that we don't do. We're just a speck in the universe. Not having humanity will do so much good to other, to giraffes and monkeys and tons of plants and which are also insignificant if you go wider. So frankly, who cares? Like, except for the need to survive, so what?
absolutely legitimate position and decision and orientation. So all things being equal, I'm born I live, I die. I'm here for a blink. Is it consequential in the scheme of the
Yeah,
universe?
die, by
Not,
the way, is just you know,
yeah,
was
no,
never proven. It's just statistical.
corporeal end, right?
Yeah.
I'm here for a blink
Mhm.
within my frame control discretion. It's my life to use and apply and to contribute and to do or not. I could, you know, dream about yachts and Learjets and, you know, the south of France. And I can dream about serving the poor, and I can dream about building and creating companies, and I can dream about a garden in my backyard and getting my string beans exactly where I want them to be. Infinite choice. My center, where I ended up getting to, was I'm interested in contributing in a positive way to the world.
And define positive.
Positive means that I create value that is aggregative, not at the expense of anything else of value, that it's an addition to, and that it is in service to us doing us better and us serving our planet as a collective home, us serving the biome of which we're part, being in service to something bigger than my own self-interest. That's doing good.
So I can share with you my definition of doing good, which I think is simpler, but it's simpler for me because I know myself better than you, right? So it's really contributing to harmony in the universe, not even in the world. Like we have so many energies that go like this, and if we can make them go like this, the impact, for good or bad or whatever, will be much stronger. So for me, to make good is to perhaps be in the eye of the storm of conflicts and make them align, make ideas, forces, people, whatever you want to, even within you, without you, whatever, the Beatles again, work together. And it doesn't matter together for what goal. Like there's so much, I think most pain in the world comes from resistance, from the conflict between what you want and what you have, for example. Okay, and how do you resolve this conflict? Either by accepting that you have less and loving it, or by having more. Okay, and so it resolves the inner conflict. Outer conflicts are the same, right? I want to go left, want to go right, and we're tied with each other to each other with our shoelaces or whatever. Let's understand how we can make this new you, which is both of us tied in our shoelaces, be a bit more happier than when we have the conflict, right? So like that's my I don't know if it's better than your definition, but I thought it's interesting to compare the two.
Yeah, I think it's the same. I think it's essentially the same. It's a different framing. The the underlying, for me, the underlying, and it's the one sort of duality or polarity that I do hold, which is that source um, from which I create can either be rooted in fear or it can be rooted in love. Fear includes scarcity, competition, power over. There are a whole bunch of sort of dimensional extensions off the root, but the root is fear. And that which is rooted in fear is going to generate a consequence that's going to reflect its roots. And if something is rooted in love and is rooted in abundance, is rooted in empathy, is rooted in all of the value extensions from coming from love, the results reflect that. So the dynamic of people coming together and co-creating, it's not a matter of eliminating adversity or eliminating conflict. It's the way in which the collective reacts to the individual who's triggered that determines whether conflict becomes conflagration or whether the attention and the priority and value system says, we just lost a member of the team because they were triggered and they just checked out. And that is a priority and takes priority over whatever the collaborative agenda was. Right now, work is human beings as commodities, as units of labor.
It's some part of the world, like it's some part of the universe.
Some dominant part of the current economic commercial domain. And the human being and beings that comprise those organizations are not factored as living beings, as experiential, emotional living beings. The difference between somebody who with others is aligned energetically in the way you were talking about, is in resonance, is in concurrence and an agreement with what the collective purpose is, what the collective will and agenda is. And that purpose is bigger than any one individual's self-interest, is an exponentially more powerful generative force and potential than an organization with 400,000 employees globally that literally every single person is atomized, rooted in fear, and looking over their shoulder or looking at the people around them or looking at the boss or looking at the leadership and waiting for the next shoe to drop or the axe to fall. I believe as a species, our current system is utilizing 1.5% of our species' collective generative creative potential. And then those same companies are turning around and creating performance metrics and quantifications of outputs and whatever, as if that's a true measure of success. In the meantime, 85% of their own people's generative potential is being completely ignored and alienated by the way they're relating to them. So integrating, translating work into human co-creative endeavor, factoring whole human beings as co-creators in it, and factoring their experience on an emotional level, on an intellectual level, on a productive level, on a generative level. holds a huge potential and promise for us correcting course and doing us much better than we're doing right now.
Even in my definition. So one thing, I think it's a process. I think if you take the whole mass of human flesh of today and compare it to the mass of human flesh of 100 years ago, there's much more self-realization and wholeness. Like people bring more of themselves, and also I think they work more. There's more connection. A lot of this happens. But one thing that triggered me, like it was even hard to listen after that. I remembered what Lao Tzu said. Lao Tzu has a paragraph that says, "The high creates the low, and the young creates the old." And if I continue, this love and hate, love and fear are part of a whole. You can't have love without fear. If I would speak from the voice of Lao Tzu, they're inseparable.
Maybe.
I don't know. I'm just I'm trying to to a concept is leaning on the opposite concept, and I think that to um, to interfere with this balance in a violent way can create a violent counter reaction, which is perhaps what happened in the US. Okay, like this violent shift of we are all Democrats, we are all Republicans, we are all against, we are all for, and it's like it's a shifting force that goes from one side to the other, because once you have very strong something else, it creates the strong other thing. Maybe.
Maybe.
So
I think the prevailing, the challenge right now is that the prevailing wolf in that battle right now is fear. That's pervasively grounding much of our culture and reality for most people in the world. And how can we balance that out? How can we make it safer for more people to be able to step up and step in and contribute and be valued and be valuable?
Like I wonder, but this will be my last comment, because I promised the stage to other people, and I think some people would like to bug you as well, or me. I wonder how would it look if we got inside the head of this other half, because from the other perspective, for sure it feels and looks much different. It's totally, if you are in the shoes of someone else, you are them. And when you're them, you have their opinion. You have no choice in that. You can't be them and be you at the same time. And I guess that if you see things from the people that trigger you, people that your gut wants to just take and break them apart and make them otherwise, so they will be whole in your eyes. You will see yourself through their eyes exactly in the same way. So I don't have the technology to do that yet. So, but it's just something to think about. Let's open the stage. Anyone wants to say anything or ask anyone anything? And if not, we can have an awkward or not awkward silence.
I think that there were some questions in the chat, so
Yeah,
that would
but
be
I would love people that want to say something, just to say it.
okay.
Sarah? Oh, you're on mute.
Yeah, so
Yes.
the
Great.
only rule I think here is that you can speak when you're on mute. Sorry, like there's some technical limitation.
So I had, hi, I'm Sharon, and I had put in the comments saying, so aside from dropping psilocybin in the water source, what are some micro seed planting actions that we can all do to move the needle towards a less toxic paradigm? Because I talk about this subject all the time, and people ask me, and they seem to be very frustrated, and I'm like, well, you know, you do what you can do, and it's a ripple effect, and you live by example. That's about it. There's just not, I have conversations, and, you know, it is what it is. It is fascinating watching this happen in our lifetime. And the pandemic is horrible and fascinating all at once. It's yeah, like I'm constantly amazed and horrified, and sometimes in the very same moment. You know, anything but boring, I'll tell you that. Yeah. No, I think thanks for the discussion, and
Hold on. There's a fire. You see, like you were talking. There's a fire alarm. Continue talking to him. Bella, okay, okay. Yeah, it will be taken care of. I'll mute myself.
I will let somebody else talk. I could go on and on, but I'll stop here.
Yeah. The question was, what can we do besides the micro things that we do? And
No, it was more I just wanted to get Doug's kind of idea. I'm guessing we're on the same page with this, as you say, sit back and be fascinated. And it's probably more of a comment than a question.
Well, I'm in, I think, the same place. I made a conscious, I think Fabian's and my work, and I'm part of a couple of other companies that are also, all of them are circling the same centers of focus, which is taking sort of intangible, ineffable ingredients of human interaction. How do you unpack emergence in the present moment? How do you unpack the present moment? How do you unpack what goes awry on a sharing basis between people, just in basic conversation and collaboration, and come up with a different way of relating to that, seeing that, experience that, and dealing with it. How can, I'm working, Tina in the top row on my screen, and I are working on something that she's evolved called the Being in Systems, and it's taking the 5 elements of ancient indigenous traditions and applying it to a new organizational paradigm, operating paradigm. So I'm very much involved in figuring out how to bridge those things and create narratives and create languaging and meta frameworks that enable people to shift out of the matrix, the old paradigm, out of the belief set, out of the ways they currently do things, without feeling like either they're falling off into woo, which isn't palatable or sellable to the C-suite, from my generation. But also without compromising the fact that this is a game changer, this is a complete paradigm shift, a wholesale replacement, and the old power over control hierarchy and all that stuff has to go. So how do you get them to let go of that and still feel experientially in terms of the control management structures in control in a different way. So I'm working in a very concrete grounding way to do that. And it looks like we might have a couple of opportunities to run it up the flagpole. And one of my partners and I actually did in a very micro basis in a very large multinational company last year as a sort of a beta of one piece of that puzzle. And it was extraordinary, like the result was extraordinary. And self-perpetuated beyond our intervention by the people that participated. So, you know, the model that I follow, ironically, the vision that I hold, ironically, is that of a virus, of infecting these companies from within by transforming their own people and having those people infect other people, infect other people. So that's, so, you know, there's a possible, you know, the running joke with all of my partners is my position, we're not selling anything. We're acting in the role of catalysts, but the people within have to co-create their own salvation. We're just responsible for creating the container and reawakening them to their capacity and ability to do that. And structure our retainer in such a way so that the leadership is hands off and leaves them alone to do that.
So when I listen to you and in perspective, what you said before about your experience in taking a vision and seeing clearly a big vision of what something can become and how it didn't work. I would, my gut feeling is be careful in selling the big dream, what I mean is, if someone who is on this process would listen to the description you just gave, me, if I was this person, I would be fearful to start. Like, you have to package it in a very small, simple steps that, you know, the agile way, if you want, like you can't reveal the whole scheme at the first. No.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
On the same page. Any other questions, suggestions, comments? Background noises. Just speak. You don't have to. The only thing you have to do to talk is to unmute yourself.
Yeah, some important elements from the last talk that stayed with me and actually was developed at the very last sentences is that because we are asking ourselves, that this is the main question that arises, that this is what I picked up from this discussion. The main question is how we can do the world better, equal, change people. Sorry for that. I'm doing it in purpose. And the answer is by changing ourselves, because thinking about the others are less conscious and so on and so on. We are subconsciously, we are putting ourselves higher as those more wise. And the truth is that they are around us to teach us the lessons. But if we would not have any more lessons to learn, we would not be probably here. We would fly away for vacation, being dead, yeah, from this place. So one and only thing is we can change ourselves, and about the salvation is really true, and about this heaven on earth is really true, and about selling the idea of heaven on earth, I would discuss it because my point of view is different. I think that some people will, I don't want to say buy, but can be influenced by seeing the different dimension. I understand that the changes sometimes that are some of us experience are so huge that actually we are living different worlds already. Yeah, some of us, and I believe so. So it is really hard to tell the story from the other tail, you know, the other tail. People will just not believe us, but somehow I believe we can put them in a state that it will be their own heaven, their own home. And it's very subjective. But if you are there once and it's not with any chemical additions to it,
Why not?
then you are sure it's you. Okay? You can really be there by yourself, not adding anything to your existence at this very moment. So what I think is that our main lessons, and I'm talking it over and over again this year and last year, is the lessons for us is to remind ourselves who we are, but also to get connected, reconnected, interconnected, and so on and so on. And co-creating at the very end, because co-creation is at the end, because before, even language is not really supporting us. And this is what Doc also said, that he had the need of creating a special way of communication. I didn't say language intentionally. And this communication part is my part. This is what I'm studying. That's why it's very interesting for me, and I'm already looking for some universal means of communication instead, regardless culture, regardless age, regardless generation, regardless every changes and different environment. And then this interconnecting is what it's the first step to enabling us as a bigger part. Yeah, and it was beautifully said, different you. Yeah, thank you for this different you. I'm buying it. I will be selling it because it's hard for us to step out, even us here today. I'm talking about myself, but I believe I'm sensing it's also we are struggling with it. So we are still trying to figure it out by our mind. There is not a solution there. The solution is somewhere else. Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you.
It reminds me, like once I saw an interview with someone that someone asked a very, very long question, like 5 minutes, and the like some minister or whatever, the answer was no.
Okay, let me do a 15-minute preliminary thoughts about the question. My question to Doug would be related to the last theme that was covered. I would like him to expand a bit on his vision of Manhattan Project regarding the transformation based on love rather than on fear, knowing that our brain reacts in a more limbic way to fear rather than to love. So there is a neuroscience reason for love being more difficult to make us jump, right, energetically than it is for fear to make us jump or escape or freeze or wherever. So what do you think, Doug, it would be like a good way of, as Sharon said, the tiny seeds that may be planted in some soil, or what would be the nutrients to that soil, so people can change their behavior, their beliefs into more loving people rather than more fearful people?
Well, it's not my answer isn't a scaled response. But from a sort of practices or strategic orientation, it starts with creating safe containers, creating spaces and times within old paradigm work with a capital W frame for people to experience themselves and each other safely, and to make connection, and to level up the level of intimacy, in terms of intimacy, the level of sharing and the level of exposure, all of those things. And just creating the container, creating the invitation and the opportunity, and the lightest touch of catalyzing people talking with each other is hugely powerful. And creating spaces in which people can be heard and feel heard, again, hugely powerful. And I really look at it as about enabling people to reawaken to their own sense of humanity, their own sense of feeling, all of that. And I am very, very clear that I cannot change somebody else. I can't make somebody else do anything. I have no control over anybody other than me. That's my dominion stops with my skin. But I can be in service to others in that way. And I can create those opportunities and support and affirm people that take me up on them and step into their own magnificence, for want of a better way of putting it.
So I'd like to say something. First the comment, and then I'll go into my own experience. So I don't see why you say that it doesn't scale. That's the only question that I have. And the reason that I'm saying this is because I think that the rippling effect is great. And why are we connected?
I didn't say I don't think it scales. I said I don't have a scaling answer solution. But I absolutely believe it scales, like that awakening and has propagative capacity and potential to spread to other people.
Yeah. So again, I don't know, the solution means there's a problem, but there is a scaling mechanism. What we're doing now is a scaling mechanism. If now we decide to put this video on YouTube and someone will see it, it scales. If people take out of this discussion something and bring it into their own conversations or decide to do something, it scales. You know, like one of the more influential things that happened in my life is that one day I saw in the calendar some strange event that I didn't remember how I put it, and I just joined the Zoom call, and it was the enlivening edge calls, and I fell on Will, I think. And it created a ripple that allowed me to meet more people, but also to propagate this emergence, whatever, further. So I think that's the only way to go. Just like I said before about legislation versus de facto, this is what happens, you know, the de facto. And perhaps this is the point that I would love you to say a few more words about the two forums that I know that are open forums that you have a touch on, you have stakes in, so that people who see this recording or even people who are here know how to connect to them. The stage is
Sure.
yours.
Sure. Well, I've been involved with them and admin in a group called the Global Challenges Collaboration. And we conduct 4 sessions a week, 2 hours each session. Thursdays are open forums. Fridays are the Appreciators Method, which are held by Gershad Wixt from Germany. And that's a individual, a support of an individual in each session by a group in processing patterns or challenges. Saturday is barn raising and is hosted by Sam Hahn, and that's for the folks that have that burning desire to build something, to produce something. And Sundays, I convene something called Unblocking, which was a session that sprouted out of people who were attempting to build things, being frustrated in purpose at getting anything built. And I'm also on the hosting team with Enlivening Edge. We have 2 sessions a month, one first Thursday, which is a storyteller, and then conversations and sharings around the featured person, and the third Thursday of every month, which is an open session catalyzed by 2 questions. Both of the Enlivening Edge sessions are really connected to Teal, Next Stage Organizations, Frederick Laloux, you know, folks that are tend to be integral folks, color-coded folks. I'm not one of those, but I seem to have found myself in the belly of their beast. And I'm the principal of a company called Being in Systems, and we expect to be launching something second quarter of this year. And I generally am available for Game 4 and support people that want to sprout these kinds of conversations. So I think that's my frame.
Okay, so I just have to say words that are more concrete, if you don't mind. So these are 2-hour sessions most of the time that are free and open for all. So
Absolutely.
anyone who is intrigued can find you on the, let's say, the evil word, Facebook.
Yes.
So there's a Facebook group called Enlivening Edge, and there's another one which is called
Global Challenges Collaboration.
Okay, so if you're interested, go to Facebook, open an account, and then close it if you or contact Doug or whatever. Highly recommended, and you don't. It's not an all or nothing deal. So I'm you know, I participate in the 2-hour session once every 2 weeks a month, and it's delightful. So that was the award from our sponsor.
Thank you. All are welcome, and if you fog up the mirror in the morning, you're qualified.
Okay, we are about to end the hour and a half that I proposed as a lower limit
Wow.
to our conversation. I'll tell you what frustrates me in this discussion. Okay, it's the first discussion of an unknown frame, and I was hoping to run into difficulties so that I can build with you what sort of frame it is, and it flows too, well, I guess I chose too talkative. No, I chose someone who can ramble for 2 hours with just by a small trigger. So
Milton's
I'm
church.
still I still don't know what I'll do next week when I have someone totally different. Any advice?
Well, you and I are of the same church, right? When it comes to like being open to the emergent and what shows up and what presents. And my experience, like my end of the telescope with this, which is for me is a first and sort of a coming out because I haven't done this kind of stuff up to now. And I'm heading into a phase where I think I'm going to be doing a lot more of it. So this was a conscious. If it's you, if it's you, baby, yeah, it's time to break the ice and step into the light. But I think the person that's coming, the person that you're sort of putting up to say, come share a chat with, um, sets the frame.
Yeah. Okay, I'll have to deal with it, I guess. It's
I mean, I'll be there in attendance as audience. So.
Awesome.
If I can make a comment?
Of course.
Yeah, this summer I did a complete experiment and pushed out of my comfort zone, and with one of my new partners, and we did because we're in France, and we just did this risky thing of just starting this YouTube channel. Don't look for it. I don't think you'll find it. and we called it Apéro avec les artistes. And so I thought, hey, let's do something. Maybe we can help the artists. But it was no more than that. I didn't really have a big plan. We show up with wine and some, cut up cheese. That was about it. And people kept saying, it's an interview. And I said, no, it's not an interview. It's just hanging out, having some wine and talking. And so it was, and I had to fight against people trying to define it as an interview. And I also had to fight against we had to fight against our own discomfort. And so I loved when you started and you said, yeah, I don't know what I'm doing. And we're just going to sit in the uncomfortable pauses. It was perfect. And it takes a bit. It takes about 3 before you kind of go, okay. And so then you start to maybe find your groove or something, but it's comfortable, but it's also fun. And so keep going, because that's why I showed up, because I go, oh, somebody else is doing this really uncomfortable, cool thing. And the things that surprise me most, and I think you're doing it, you can't predict, and just be open to whatever comes out. And the ones that I thought were going to go one way absolutely did not. And at first I was like, okay, am I disappointed about that? And I wasn't quite sure. But we did 10 of them. We're so not even halfway through with editing them and putting them up, which is why I say don't go looking for it. And I said, okay, we just do 10 and then we can stop. So it's giving the permission. And, I don't know if anybody else will enjoy it, but we had a hell of a lot of fun. So if entertaining yourself is, half the battle, I think people join watching you guys, you and anybody else, enjoy yourselves. So I would say keep a mindset of delight and play, and it'll all be good.
Hearing you, one thing I think the idea is to bring, I don't know, into the stage. It's an archaic metaphor. People who I find interesting, but like in a longer vision, like in a bigger vision of things, why me? Like I would like forward anyone who wants to interview anyone can just take the stage and talk to someone who they find interesting in the same stage. No, it's not about who I find interesting. It's about someone who finds someone interesting.
Mhm. That is an
So you're all
interesting.
invited, like if you want to take this platform, it would be a pleasure.
Yeah, it's also, I don't know if you've read the book Gathering by Priya Parker. It's worth a read because she talks about how having a little bit of structure it, kind of supports and prompts, and it actually adds more to it. Not a lot, but it's gentle. It's a gentle nudge with a group, and so I've practiced with that, and it absolutely works. Yeah. So then you can have openness and the flexibility, but there's a sauce that connects everything. I don't know how that's the best way to describe it. So I recommend that book to you. Yeah. But otherwise, I think it's a phenomenal idea. I think I'll be joining you.
Great. So we have at least one for an audience. Anyone else wants to say something? I feel that we're like slowly wrapping up this exchange of today. Did you enjoy it?
Hello.
Hello, Dave.
Hello, Doug. Hello, Fabian. Hello, Dove. Yeah, I only just woke up, so I saw the invite reminder, and so I just popped in quietly. I thought I was quietly in the background, but you heard my coffee machine starting up because it's first thing in the morning. Yeah, interesting conversation, and I don't want to sort of dig into things, but Doug and I have been talking for a number of years now, and weaving, conceiving, plotting and planning, listening and thinking a little bit differently. A lot of the stuff that I do is really looking at the world from, well, helping to look at the world from multiple perspectives. And I think that is something that Doug sort of touched on. I wasn't going to talk today because my internet connection is so poor. So if I start to freeze, let me know. I'm doing some work at the moment with a guy called Robbie Stamp, and I mention this because Robbie was the business partner of Douglas Adams, who wrote Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And Douglas unfortunately died 10 years ago with a vision. He died with a vision, and that is how we use technology to see the world from multiple perspectives. And so this is something that Robbie and a collection of 7 people around the world are working to continue his vision of multiple perspectives. The reason why I got invited in there, unbeknown to me, was that Douglas Adams had heard about me creating a talking forest 14, 15 years ago now. And the ability for us to be able to be taken by surprise when something other than another human speaks to us in our own language. And we begin to have a conversation and we begin to expand our awareness is kind of where I'm going intuitively into this conversation.
Oh, just I have to interrupt you. I would love to add you to the list of people I'd love to know more about. So I'll contact you after this.
Yeah, no, that's cool. Now I've lost track of my thought a little bit. I think, as a former brain injury therapist, one of those things is that our brain gets it falls into a pattern of identifying things and turning things into icons. You know, language is a shortcut to something that's richer. And often in these sort of conversations, we fall into the patterns of saying the same sort of stuff, and it doesn't really trigger any sort of detailed exploration. I don't think I want to open up that wormhole at the moment, but I guess what I'm seeing at the moment is, like recently I joined a Navajo group, and I've been working with people around the Pacific. And when we look at the challenges, especially with COVID, we find that there are cultural crossovers in the way that they see the world. And often these conversations are very urban centric. They are people living in a particular frame of seeing the world, of working for a company, and all of this sort of stuff. And it's healthy to be able to see, and this is where Douglas is coming from other perspectives, and find the commons in their te ao, which is Māori, te ao Māori, a view of the world, how they relate to it, how ownership is conceived, how guardianship is managed, how we treat somebody when they could be an enemy or a friend, all of this sort of stuff. So there's, I'll try and sum up. I guess there's a whole area here where we need to do some serious reconnecting and looking at things by taking the skin that we wear off. I'm not sure if I'm explaining this very well. I've only had one cup of coffee this morning. I really need two, but I think I'll stop rambling now. You can ask a question maybe.
No, I think I'll ask you questions when we talk in a larger forum. Okay, I see people are already dropping off. Thanks a lot for this wonderful opportunity, Doug, and everyone who was here. You know, it's a part of the same forest as you see.
And thank you for creating it.
Yeah. Okay, and next time I'm talking to a friend of mine who is a graphical facilitator and whose passion is storytelling. So if you want to join, let's see what happens.
Terrific.
Take care. Bye-bye.